I'm here with Andrew Johnson, the pastor of Faith Memorial Baptist Church in Houston. Now, Andrew, your church in its heyday ran more than 1,000 in a predominantly Anglo section of town, or at least one side of it was predominantly Anglo. Now, your church is quite a bit smaller, at least runs quite a bit smaller, and sits on a dividing line between a predominantly African-American neighborhood and what is now a predominantly Hispanic side of town. So tell us what your church looks like now and what it was like when you started pastoring there.
Sure. So when I first came to Faith Memorial, it was like stepping back in time in some ways. I grew up in a small town called Luling, Texas. I went to Central Baptist Church there, and it reminded me a lot of home, right? So it was, 80s fuzzy microphones and fuchsia carpet and really an Anglo-centric, white-centered culture was present in a community that didn't reflect that. So what we have tried to go through is just this slow and steady process of being a church that ministers to the community where we are and that can reflect the community where we are.
Okay. So how old were you when you started pastoring there?
I was 22, yeah.
And then what was the average age of the people you were pastoring?
They were like definitely north of 60, 70, 80, 90. I did 14 funerals the first year that I was there.
14.
So, there was definitely some gray hair in the congregation.
So a very young pastor in his first pastorate from Luling, Texas, moves to the greater Fifth Ward in Houston, pastoring a church that doesn't look anything like its community. How do you spend that first year, that first 2 years? What did you do?
Yeah, I learned a lot. I came into my first pastorate with that narcissism that's kind of built into anyone who thinks that they can lead God's people, that says, I'm the man for the job. And the Lord allowed that to slowly be pulled apart and pulled away by learning. So we didn't change anything. I didn't come in and change facilities or programs or ministry initiatives. We just walked through the book of Acts, expositionally, what was the church supposed to be? And how did the gospel bring a group of people to life in that particular time? And ultimately, when it came time to change, after about a year, we changed facilities. And then after that, we changed some staffing around year 3. And really, around year 4, we started launching vision and adjusting mission, those type of things. So it was just a slow and steady process of allowing the scripture to point us to where we should go, rather than me leading out with these new ideas that I had, which reasonably should not be, necessarily gambled on.
Now, some of those guys that you talked about that feel a sense of call to lead God's people would say, and I really want to pastor, and I know I'm supposed to pastor, I just don't want to pastor there because of all the problems and the mismatch. Yeah. What would you say to those guys?
Yeah, I would say that that's something to bring to the prayer closet. I mean, it's something you really have to, if that's not where, you really got to envision where is the place. And a lot of the things that drive newer people into ministry are external desires. Like, I want to be where the coolest coffee shops are, and I want to be able to ride my bike to the grocery store, but I felt like the Lord was leading me to desire a place where the gospel would make such transformation in those external things, and where there was a desperation, where I didn't have to market that people were in need, but I could go to where people were in need and they knew it, and that the gospel would be well received there, and that a healthy church is so desperately needed in those communities.
Church revitalization is hard work. Community engagement is hard work. You've had some help along the way from the outside. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. We wouldn't be here today if it weren't for just some amazing friends. Learning the systems and structures of our local association, our state denomination, and the national denomination. Those were all really helpful resources for training and sometimes funding, but really friendships from local pastors was a huge part of that. For the first year, I took a spiral notepad and I just called people, and I was amazed that they returned my call and bought me lunch and were willing to just invest into my life. So out of those friendships created partnerships where once they saw that what we were doing was healthy, they were willing to invest into it with resources. So, yeah.
Do you think you're done with the revitalization journey?
No, not at all. I think that we're at a place right now where we're healthy, and that's it's such a relief, and it's such a peaceful place to be. But I think the ultimate goal of health and maturity is reproduction. And so to be fruitful and multiply, to go and make disciples, but really to go revitalize another church or plant another church, that's on the horizon for me and for our church.
All right. Well, thanks for introducing us to your story.
Absolutely.